the lantern of Maple Street. In the early years of the 20th century, tucked between rolling hills and endless fields, there stood a quiet American town called Maple Creek. Life moved slowly there. The days were filled with the sounds of horse-drawn wagons, distant church bells, and neighbors greeting one another from wooden porches. At the end of the town's oldest road, known as Maple Street, lived an elderly woman named Eleanor Whitmore. Eleanor was a mystery to everyone. No one knew much about her past. Some said she had once traveled across the country. Others whispered that she had loved someone who never returned from a distant journey. But Eleanor never spoke about herself. Every evening, just as the sun disappeared beyond the hills, she would step outside carrying an old brass lantern. The lantern was unlike any other. Its metal frame was worn by time, yet it always shone with a warm golden light. Even on the darkest nights, its glow never seemed to fade. The townspeople noticed something strange. Whenever Eleanor lit the lantern and sat on the wooden bench outside her house, people would gather around her. Travelers, shopkeepers, children, and farmers all came to listen. And Eleanor would tell stories, stories of courage, stories of friendship, stories of dreams that refused to die. Her voice was gentle, yet every word seemed to carry a kind of magic. The listeners often felt as though they were no longer sitting on Maple Street. Instead, they were walking through distant forests, sailing across stormy seas, or standing beside heroes from another time. But there was something even stranger. Many people claimed that the stories somehow reflected their own lives. A young farmer struggling to save his family farm heard a tale about perseverance. A lonely widow heard a story about finding hope after loss. A frightened child heard a story about discovering courage. It was as if the lantern somehow knew exactly what each person needed to hear. Years passed, and Eleanor's evening gatherings became a cherished tradition. People traveled from neighboring towns just to hear her stories. Yet no one ever discovered the secret of the lantern. One autumn evening, a curious young journalist named Thomas Reed arrived in Maple Creek. He had heard countless rumors about Eleanor and her mysterious lantern. Determined to uncover the truth, Thomas attended her storytelling sessions night after night. The more he listened, the more fascinated he became. Finally, after several weeks, he gathered enough courage to ask, "Eleanor," he said softly, "where did that lantern come from?" The old woman smiled. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she invited Thomas inside her small house. The room was simple, filled with old books, photographs, and memories collected over many years. Eleanor placed the lantern on a wooden table. "This lantern," she began, "was given to me by my father when I was a young girl." Thomas leaned closer. "He told me that every person carries a light inside them. Some lights burn brightly. Others grow dim because of fear, sadness, or regret." She gently touched the lantern's glass. "This lantern doesn't create stories. It simply reminds me to look for the light that already exists within people." Thomas looked puzzled. Eleanor smiled again. "The stories come from the people themselves." That answer only deepened the mystery. But Thomas sensed she was telling the truth. The lantern wasn't magical because of what it did. It was magical because of what it inspired. Months later, winter arrived. Snow covered the streets of Maple Creek. One evening, the townspeople gathered as usual on Maple Street. But Eleanor never came outside. Concerned, several neighbors entered her home. They found her peacefully resting in her chair, the lantern beside her. Eleanor Whitmore had passed away. The town mourned deeply. For days, silence filled Maple Street. No stories were told. No warm, golden light appeared in the evening darkness. Then, one night, something unexpected happened. A young girl named Sarah stepped forward, carrying Eleanor's lantern. She sat on the same wooden bench. The townspeople watched quietly. Nervous but determined, Sarah began telling a story. It wasn't perfect. She stumbled over a few words, but as she continued, people smiled. The warmth had returned, not because of the lantern, because of the story. From that day on, different people took turns sharing stories beneath the lantern's glow. The tradition continued year after year. Children grew into adults. New families arrived. Old generations passed on. Yet every evening, the lantern remained lit. And so the people of Maple Creek learned an important lesson. The greatest stories are not hidden in magical objects or distant places. They live within ordinary people. All they need is someone willing to share them. And on quiet nights, if you walk down Maple Street,